Hi everyone, welcome to my talk about LittleJS Engine and how you can make awesome games with it. Who am I? Well, I'm Frank Force, the creator of LittleJS. I've worked in game dev for over 20 years on some games you've probably played, like Doom, Psyops, and Starhawk. I've also completed many 48-hour game jams, and I've done a lot of other indie dev stuff. I've done a few JS 13Ks and won second place. I've also won Optical Illusion of the Year with the JavaScript program. And I've published over 1,000 tiny JavaScript programs on a website called Twitter, where we make 140 character JavaScript programs. So they are super small, but I've managed to create a wide variety of visual outputs. More recently, I've been interested in long-form generative art, like you see here, which are all created with JavaScript. So what is LittleJS, and why should you care? Well, LittleJS is a super lightweight and fast JavaScript game engine. It has everything included to start making games right away, and several example projects to get you started. It is also very important to make sure that this is released with an open source MIT license so that anyone can use it without worrying about complicated licensing agreements. LittleJS is best demonstrated by my game Space Huggers, which I originally released for JS 13K, but I've later updated it on Newgrounds. So please check that out for a great demonstration of all of the stuff that LittleJS can do. LittleJS is packed full of features, with everything included to start making games. For many game engines, the size of the game engine is not a feature, but for LittleJS, it is one of the main features because the footprint is extremely tiny. There are no dependencies, and I made sure that the interface is also super streamlined. This allows it to fit in a super small zip file for size coding competitions like JS 13K, but it also makes the code very easy to use and work with. So it's a great way to start learning about how game engines work. It can also make big games too. We'll talk about that soon. Because it has very fast sprite rendering of on the order of 100,000 sprites. And it also has a super fast level data rendering system too. Combining these two things, you can have a fully featured game with a WebGL and Canvas support for the best of both worlds. It also has a mobile and touch support because that's so important these days. LittleJS is an object-oriented game engine that uses engine object as the base class. You can extend this for use in your own game. Every engine object will automatically be updated and drawn every frame. It also has a physics and collision handling built in, and some other features that you will need, like a parent-child system and sorting for rendering and debug features. LittleJS has a very unique audio system with positional generative audio. You can create sound effects without needing any kind of asset file. So it's a very fast to iterate with. And these sound effects are positional so that the stereo, panning, and volume is automatically attenuated to make it sound like it's coming from a location in the world. LittleJS also provides a tiny music system, which is really useful for size coding competitions. And you can, of course, use WAV, MP3, or OGG files too. LittleJS has an all-inclusive input handling solution for keyboard and mouse, as well as up to 4 gamepads, and even has an on-screen gamepad for touch devices. The code is fully documented. There's a website that you can browse all the documentation, which is auto-generated from code in the comments using JSDoc. The code itself is also very simple and easy to read. and it's packed full of comments so that everyone can understand how everything works. There's a build system included with several starter projects, and we've recently created a Discord for people to share their work and ask questions. LittleJS is built with an object-oriented structure. It comes with several classes. Pretty much all of the components are created with a class. So let's talk about how some of those work. Vector2 is the low-level math class used by LittleJS, which holds an X and Y coordinate, and it has all the standard math functions that you would expect. I found that it's better to not modify, but simply return a copy from these math functions so you can create a chain of more complex vector math. I also have asserts peppered throughout the code to ensure that everything is used properly, and these asserts will automatically be removed from release builds for a little bit of speed boost. The color class handles all the color math computations. It holds an RGBA color and has similar math functions to Vector2, like your add, subtract, and multiply and stuff. There's conversions to and from HSL and hex, as well as other useful functions like lerp and mutate. Another great and useful feature is the timer class, which is a simple object that allows you to track how long has passed since it was set without any update required. So in other words, you will call set, pass in the seconds to start it, then you will call get to see how long has passed, and then when you're ready, you can call unset to set it back to unset mode. I use these all the time in my gameplay code, so I hope you will give that a shot. The engine object is the base class for LittleJS, which contains most of the functionality for collision and rendering. All these engine objects are stored in a list where they'll be automatically updated and rendered each frame. And they have the standard attributes that you would expect for a low-level object like that, with a position, size, how it's drawn. The particle system class provided by LittleJS extends engine object to add the ability to emit particles. And these particles also extend engine object so they can have physics and collision on them. They have a variety of parameters to tweak to create all different types of particle effects, like a fire, smoke, or whatever you need for that type of game. LittleJS has its own medal system built in for tracking player achievements. It's automatically saved to local storage, and there's a pop-up that shows up when an achievement is first unlocked. And this medal system has Newgrounds support automatically built in, so you can put your games on Newgrounds very easily. LittleJS has its own simple and fast physics system built in. Now this is just for axis-align bounding box collision, so there's no ability to rotate these objects with physics, that you can rotate them how they are rendered. There are two types of physics, an object versus level physics and an object versus object physics. And both of these types of physics combine to give you a full physical solution. The object versus level physics is where you get the super fast collision between a moving object and a stationary tile level data. There are several functions provided to test where collision is, do a raycast, and I found that it's possible to have very huge levels, and it's a very performant way of doing physics. There's also a full 2D physics solver for object versus object collisions, and you can have a few hundred objects interacting in that way. It's not a perfectly realistic physics system, but there are several parameters you can tweak to control how these objects behave, like the mass, dampening, elasticity, and friction. And LittleJS rendering system is is the best of WebGL and Canvas 2D. You can think of it like a WebGL sandwich, where there's a bottom layer of Canvas 2D for the background and the level data and other effects where you would need a Canvas 2D rendering. Then you have a middle layer of super fast sprite rendering and particle effects done using WebGL. And your very top layer is another Canvas 2D layer for the overlay text and effects, the HUD, any type of debug info. Now the WebGL rendering is awesome because it's just so incredibly fast. You can render out thousands and thousands of sprites at 60 frames per second. It does this by batching up all these draw calls. And it's able to do this because all those sprites are on the same tile sheet, so there's only one texture necessary. And I think even for much larger games, you can easily fit most of the art on a single tile sheet, though it's of course possible to use multiple textures if you need to. And there's some really nice sprite rendering features available, like being able to tint sprites, apply additive color, rotate and mirror sprites. The Canvas 2D rendering is for the back and front layers. It's a little bit slower than the WebGL rendering, but much more versatile because you have all of your standard Canvas 2D functions like a text rendering, drawing shapes and lines, things like that. The level data also uses Canvas 2D to render. And if you prefer, you can even disable WebGL and everything will be rendered to Canvas 2D. The tile layer system is the fast level rendering. That is where you have a grid of tiles that are cached to an off-screen canvas for super fast rendering. It's kind of intended to be matched up with the collision data so that you have a level collision and rendering going on. And you can use multiple tile layers if you need to have a back and front layer or layers next to each other. Another great thing about this system is that these layers are, since they're stored on another canvas, you can actually draw to that canvas directly for persistent effects like destruction. The way this all works is by holding an array of these tile layer data objects, which is how to draw each tile. And they're just a small object that holds the rotation, mirror, color, and tile index for each tile. And it will spin through the entire array and render out all those tiles to the off-screen canvas. And then each frame, it doesn't need to do that, so it's much, much faster. There's also a debug overlay system that you can access by pressing the tilde button. It has an object inspector and a few other really useful modes for physics, particles, and stuff like that. The LittleJS audio system provides generative sound and music. ZZFX is the tiny sound effect generator. It has its own sound effect editor, which is another website that I've released ZZFX separately from LittleJS. You can use it for any game you'd like. The sound effects designer is really nice because there are a bunch of presets you can click on, but also you can individually tweak all of the parameters. You can also save out sounds and export, import, and even save as a WAV file if you'd like. ZZFXM is the tiny music player that's included with LittleJS. And this is something that you really need if you're doing a size coding competition. It is able to play music using ZZFX to generate the sound effects with a super tiny music format that's human readable and a super tiny player. The output is also in stereo, and there are a bunch of tools that are available for creating these music, like a sequencer and converter from ProTracker. And of course, if you have more space, you might want to just use an MP3 or OGG file for your music, or even WAV. There are several more functions for audio that are provided, like speech synthesis and the ability to play samples directly. LittleJS comes with a variety of starter projects you can build on for pretty much any type of game that you might like to make. Hello World is just your simple example starter project that shows off the various core functionality of LittleJS, like a particle system, level data, and game objects, that type of thing. Stress test is what you can use to test how many sprites it's able to render at 60 FPS on a variety of different devices. We found that it works really well on mobile devices, sometimes even better than desktop. There's a puzzle game provided, which is a basic match 3 style puzzle game, and you can use a touchpad or a mouse to control that. And feel free to build on any of these starter projects for your own game if you'd like. That's why they're there. For an arcade style game, we have Breakout. It shows collision and physics. You could also control it with a touchpad or a mouse, gamepad. The most complicated example is the platformer, which has more advanced physics for platforming, jumping, ladders, crates and enemies, shooting, that type of thing. I've also released the particle editor, so you can use this to create particle systems for your game. It's still a work in progress. There's a lot more things that I want to add to it, but it's definitely a good proof of concept. So let's talk about what the future is for LittleJS and how you might want to be part of it. So it's been less than a year since I released LittleJS, and already has over 2,000 likes on GitHub. I've taken my JS13K game Space Huggers and refined it a bit and released it on new grounds with the achievement system. So please check that out. A lot of people played it, and I think it's definitely one of the best games I've made. It's fully playable on desktop or mobile. You can even play co-op with up to 4 players. Isletopia is being developed using LittleJS, and you can wishlist that. It's coming to Steam soon. The particle editor is still in development, as are a few other tools that we're working on. I really want to make a CZFX music generator, so we'll see if I get to that. And it really comes down to what other people are interested in and what they want to see. I think that the next JS13K is going to be huge for LittleJS because this game engine really excels at those size coding game jams. Though, like I said, it's definitely able to expand a game into a larger game. I would like to do more Space Hugger stuff at some point. I have so many ideas for how to build out for that, though it's not really my focus right now. So why don't you tell me what you like to see, and what kind of games you want to make with LittleJS. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. I really feel like LittleJS is one of the best things that I've ever made, and I'm just so happy that I have this opportunity to share it with everybody. It's fully open sourced for everyone to use for anything that they want to use it for. So please like it on GitHub, download it, and try the example games. You can follow me on Twitter at Killed by a Pixel. I post all the time about everything I'm working on, whether it be generative art or games. And next year, or this coming year, definitely will be making another game with LittleJS for JS13K. Make sure you check out my GitHub, because I have a lot of other cool stuff I've been working on, ZZFX, for example, and many other small tools and other game development stuff. Check out my Twitter. That's where I published all those 1,000 tiny JavaScript programs that are so fun to mess around with. And if you're interested in generative art, definitely check out my FX Hash, which is where I've been releasing these long-form generative art programs. So I'm going to wrap it up and thank everyone for watching. And I'll say, believe in yourself. Try to make games with LittleJS. share the games you make with us, and you're just going to keep making better and better games every time you make a game, and I can't wait to see what everybody does with it. So thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and have a great day.